Hi everybody, good morning, good afternoon or good evening, depending on which part of the planet you currently are. Welcome to Data Platform Summit 2022 from my side. I'm extremely happy to be with all of you here, virtually of course, so first of all, huge thanks to Amit and the whole Data Platform Summit team for organizing this fantastic event. Before we start, I would like to thank our sponsors, Microsoft. Without their help and support, it would be hard to pull everything together and organize such a huge conference. Therefore, thanks to Microsoft for supporting Data Platform Summit and for supporting Data Platform Geeks and SQL Server Geeks community initiatives. Before we start, let me just briefly introduce myself. My name is Nikola Ilic. I'm originally from Belgrade in Serbia, but for the last 6 years, I live in a wonderful city of Salzburg in Austria, where I work as an independent data platform consultant and trainer with special focus on Power BI. Living in Salzburg was the reason why I've chosen my nickname Data Mozart. As you may know, Salzburg is worldly famous as a birthplace of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, so I was brave enough to use his last name as part of my nickname. And that's why my motto is make music from your data. You can find me on web. I'm regularly blogging at data-mozart.com. I'm also active on social media like LinkedIn or Twitter, so feel free to connect if you like. A few more sentences about me. I have multiple year experience working with different data products, predominantly Microsoft Data Platform. Started with SQL Server, then brushed myself with SQL Server Analysis Services, multidimensional reporting services, integration services, and of course with Power BI, which I'm a big fan of. I'm also Microsoft Data Platform MVP, Microsoft Certified Trainer, and I've also authored many courses on Pluralsight platform. Privately father of 2 kids and true football and Barca fan, as you may conclude looking at the photo on the screen. Okay, so let me briefly walk you through the contents of our today's session. We will start with understanding how and where to start when designing your Power BI solutions. Don't forget, you must get to know your audience before you start the design process. Not every piece of information should be transmitted using whatever visualization type you want. Once you identify the audience, you should think about the message you want to share with them and the most appropriate visualization type to transmit that message. Next, we will cover an extremely important topic of designing your reports for accessibility. We will examine why accessibility matters and what should you do to increase the adoption of your Power BI solution. Last but not least, we will wrap it up by talking about golden rules when it comes to data visualization. These rules can be applied outside of Power BI too, but if you stick with them in your Power BI reports, I can assure you that you will achieve a better overall experience for your report consumers. Okay, so let's first talk about understanding the audience for your report as one of the first and most important steps in designing effective reporting solutions. But before we dive into this, let me ask you a simple question. Why are visuals so powerful? According to some scientific researches, visuals are processed 60,000 times faster than text. That means using visuals, you can transmit the message more efficiently. You can think of visuals as anchors. They take care that the textual narrative message is securely stored deep in the viewer's memory. Visuals also have the power of triggering our emotions. Consequently, emotions increase our motivation, which helps us to increase the bandwidth for remembering facts. Finally, scientific researches confirm that visuals increase the retention of the absorbed information. For example, 72 hours after receiving information, the retention rate for a narrative method is 10%, while it is around 35% when transmitting the visual message. Going back to our original discussion point, identifying the audience, there are at least 3 main groups of report consumers. Management or executives. Those are folks responsible for making business decisions based on the insights from the data. Their focus is mainly on mid to long-term decisions and plans. Analysts. This is a very broad group that can be understood and treated differently depending on the company, business, and so on. But generally speaking, analysts usually determine the pros and cons of various strategical goals and evaluate and improve business processes. Employee. We can think of them as persons that leverage data for taking actions. These actions are usually operational. You can think of someone who monitors the system health or follows the stock level on a daily basis, for example. So if we think of each of these audiences in a specific way, I think it's fair to say that each group would rely on a specific report type. Of course, this is not exclusively a one-to-one relationship between the audience and the report type, as sometimes there will be overlapping between these items. However, let's talk about some most common situations and try to understand what is the key message or key messages that each of these report types should transmit. Dashboard. Tell me the story as quickly as possible. A good dashboard includes high-level metrics displayed on a single page. Visuals are simple, clean, clearly labeled to avoid any possible confusion. How are business doing compared to the previous year? Or did we reach our goals? Are some of the most frequent questions that the good dashboard should answer. Analytical reports. This is the most common report type. These reports broaden the perspective, answering not just high-level questions which we mentioned with dashboards, but also some more specific questions such as how many blue products have we sold in the USA compared to Australia? Or why do customers buy product X only in the first quarter of the year? Analytical reports often have different filters and slicers to slice and dice the data from different perspectives, or to go deep into understanding the specific patterns. Operational reports. I like to think about them as the cockpit of your car or of the aeroplane. When you sit in the car, there is a bunch of different information at your disposal to help you understand the current state of the car. How much fuel remained, what is the temperature of the engine, and so on. Operational reports should minimize the analytical features in order to enable focusing on the operational real-time data that may help to take some actions or make some decisions. Finally, educational reports don't target any specific audience. They are simply assuming that the person is not familiar with the data or context. Because of that, these reports often need to provide some additional description or guidance, usually in narrative form, to help consumers better understand the data. If you look for a good example of an educational report, you don't need to go far in the past. Reports about COVID spreading or vaccination rates are nowadays a typical example of this report type. From now on, we will shift our focus to analytical reports, and everything we cover in the remaining part of the session relates to analytical reports development and visualizing the data. So let's start with the obvious. Or is it obvious? To be completely honest, not every piece of data has the same level of importance. Simply said, some data points have higher importance than others. If your overall revenue is 50% lower than in the previous month, it's definitely way more significant than looking at the chart showing individual numbers per product color. With that in mind, try to place all key data points in the top left corner, as most of the people on our planet read from left to right and from top to bottom. Imagine reading a book or newspapers, for example. And that position will naturally catch their attention right away. Additionally, try to align report elements both vertically and horizontally. This will remove clutter and provide better visibility. You may also want to apply the so-called rule of thirds, which says divide the report page into 9 equal cells, 3 columns and 3 rows and place the report content into these cells. That doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have exactly 9 elements on the report page, as you may also span the visual across 2 or more cells, like in my example here, where I have this visual at the bottom covering 2 horizontal cells, or this one on the right covering 2 vertical cells. Okay, the next important thing to keep in mind is finding the right balance. I know, Nikola, that's the general requirement, not exclusively related to Power BI report development. And that's correct, but let's examine what balance means when it comes to Power BI visualizations. First of all, there are 2 types of balances. Symmetrical balance is quite simple to understand. You place the visuals evenly on the report page, both horizontally and vertically, and that's it. You achieved symmetrical balance. The other balance type, asymmetrical, is slightly more complex to absorb. It's based on the so-called golden ratio and Fibonacci sequence. But don't worry, I will not bother you with explaining the mathematics behind this concept. In the report design process, this rule means put one large visual on the page to attain the first impression, and then use smaller visuals to support the big one and provide additional context to it. In reality, imagine something like having a large visual showing total revenue per brand, and then a smaller visual breaking down figures per country, and finally the smallest visual showing quantity sold and number of unique customers that purchased the product. Let's now move on and explain more important concepts for effective data visualization. If you need to emphasize a specific data point within the visual, or even a specific report element on the page, you may want to leverage contrast to achieve this. By using specific colors, fonts, lines, you can immediately draw users' attention and point them where to look once they open the report. The other concept is proximity. Proximity refers to a space between the report elements. If your report contains related objects, you should not just group them, but also visually separate this group from the others by providing some space in between. This one is probably the most complicated to define. While it's quite easy to explain why and how to split your report canvas into 9 equal cells, there are literally hundreds of blog posts, books, videos from well-known and trusted authors explaining which visualization type to use for specific data representation. Based on what kind of insight you want to provide, for example, comparison between 2 data points, distribution of specific value, relationships between different data, changes over time, parts of the whole, and so on, there are certain visual types that should be used. I've intentionally used the word should, as no one can prohibit you from using, let's say, gojis, pie charts, 3D charts in your dashboards, even though a lot of recognized experts advised against that. Just be careful and mindful in which scenario to use what visual type. Here is the simplistic graph, or let's call it decision tree, showing in which scenario to choose a certain visual type. I hear you. Hey Nikola, if this is a simple graph, how does the complex one look? That's a fair question, but I can't help you more than give you some recommendations about which visual to use for some most common requests. Ask yourself, what do you want to display? Do you need to show how one value compares to the other? Or maybe you need to explain the distribution of the data and quickly identify outliers. If you want to display a correlation between 2 or more variables, you would want to use relationship charts. Finally, if the goal is to understand parts of the whole, you should apply composition charts. However, it's not just simple as that. There are some additional parameters to evaluate when you are defining which visualization type to use. If you want to compare, If you want to compare multiple items, a table or bar chart should be your preferred choice. On the other hand, if you perform a comparison over time, a line chart, column chart, or area chart are recommended. If you want to analyze data distribution, if you're dealing with one single variable, you should use a column chart or histogram. When you need to take into account two variables, a scatter plot is the way to go. The number of variables is also important if you want to display relationships between the data points. Again, a scatter plot is an effective solution for the two variables case, while including the third variable suggests using a bubble plot visual. Finally, data composition can be both static and dynamic. To understand dynamic composition, recommended choices are stacked column chart and stacked area chart. For static use cases, you can choose between pie chart and waterfall chart. As you are now already familiar with the various visualization types in Power BI, let's examine in which scenarios you should apply some of the most common visuals. You should use a table or matrix visual to show a logical series of rows and columns. If you need to display data distribution across different categories, consider using clustered or stacked column. Comparing a large number of data points is most effectively performed using a scatter plot, while line or area charts enable a clear understanding of changes and trends over time. Finally, it doesn't make much sense to display geographical data using, let's say, a funnel or line chart. In those situations, you should use maps. Let's now explain in more detail how to handle specific types of data and how to display it in the most effective way. If you have groups representing a specific category, for example brands or countries, as there is no logical sequence between the elements, like brand Contoso may go before or after the adventure works on the axis, or the USA can be first or last on the axis, so there is no logical rule to follow. Unlike in time dimension, for example, where you would expect to see quarter 2 right after quarter 1 and so on. Therefore, instead of using a line chart in these scenarios, it makes much more sense to show the data in a bar chart and enable report consumers to quickly compare the numbers between different data points. Displaying data over time is one of the main requirements in almost every reporting solution. Now ask yourself, what is the most intuitive way to follow the changes over time? I assume we can agree it would be from left to right. Now imagine representing a data dimension on the y-axis. That looks really weird if you ask me. Not just weird, but the functionality is very questionable, as I would need to scroll up and down to see all available data points. On the other hand, by showing the data dimension on the x-axis and enabling users to read the data from left to right, the visual will probably meet their expectations. We've already agreed, or at least I think we agreed, that bar charts are the most appropriate way to display categorical data. However, it's not just simple as that. Some additional considerations apply. Let's imagine that you need to compare performance between the different brands and rank them based on it. If you sort data points in alphabetical order, users will need to invest additional time and effort to identify the top and worst performing brands. On the other side, if you sort brands based on the total revenue in descending order, the user can immediately spot which brands were high performant. Additionally, you may also take advantage of the conditional formatting, like in one of the examples I shown you previously, and you can use conditional formatting feature to emphasize the difference even more. Very often we are facing some requirements that go beyond simple logic. One of them is to enable the comparison of the specific value across multiple dimensions. Let's say that your users need to see total revenue by brand, but also per year. There are multiple ways to interpret the data, but be careful when choosing the most optimal one. For example, if you decide to use tree map visual, I bet your users will raise more questions than they will get answers. On the flip side, if you use cluster column or cluster bar chart, data quickly starts to get more sense. The takeaway from this story: when you need to display data across multiple dimensions, avoid tree maps and similar visual types. This one is interesting. When the data contains many similar values, it can be quite challenging to display it to users in a manner that they can quickly identify differences and compare the values. It's even more challenging if you decide to round the data labels and you get something as I have here. Is it true that the total revenue is the same for Contoso, AdventureWorks and Fabricam? According to my report on the right, yes, that's true. However, what happens if I switch this same data to a table or matrix visual? Now we are talking. As you may notice, even though the values are similar, there is still a difference between them, and I can spot the difference when using an appropriate visual type. So you can see that there is a $300,000 difference between Fabricam and Contoso. So it's not a small amount. I sincerely hope that your business doesn't produce negative values, but we need to face the reality and accept that sometimes our figures will be below zero. And in these situations, choosing the right visual is of paramount importance. Let's say that I have a negative value in my dataset and I decide to display the data using one of the proportional visuals, such as donut chart or pie chart. Note that these visuals can't reproduce negative values. What's even worse, they can easily generate confusion among the consumers, as the legend will be displayed, but no value is shown in the visual. Again, in a scenario like this, stick with a simple clustered column chart, which can handle both positive and negative values. As you may know, one same report may look completely different across different devices. Power BI report that contains exactly the same data points looks quite different on a desktop compared to a mobile phone, for example. Similar applies to different persons. You have to keep in mind that your users might have visual, motor or cognitive impairments. So the same report may look different from the perspective of users with deficiencies. If you ask yourself why accessibility matters, let me show you one very basic example. If you're a normal person, and when I say normal, I mean you don't have any visual impairments, that's how you'll see this nice balloon flying over green fields. But if you're diagnosed with deuteranopia, which is the medical name for green blind impairment, this same picture will look quite different. Don't you agree? The same applies to colors used in the reports. With that in mind, you should always design, or at least strive to design your reports to be accessible to as many users as possible. Luckily, Power BI offers a whole range of built-in accessibility features. Some of them don't even require additional configuration, so let's briefly introduce them. Keyboard navigation. All Power BI visuals are keyboard friendly, and you can navigate between them. You can also click on the question mark to access the most frequently used keyboard shortcuts. Screen reader. Generally, every Power BI object is compatible with screen readers. High contrast color. If you set high contrast mode in Windows, Power BI will automatically detect the theme used in Windows and apply the same setup to your reports. Focus mode. This enables users to fill up more space on their screens. And finally, show data table. Using a shortcut Alt-Shift-F11, users can switch to a tabular view of the data from the visual. Aside from these built-in features that don't require any additional configuration, Power BI also offers a set of features out of the box, but they need to be configured by the report author. Let's examine all of these configurable features. Alt text enables you to add a textual description of the visual elements on your report page. This way users can understand what kind of message the visual provides, even if they are not able to see the visual itself. Tab order helps smooth keyboard navigation between the report elements, matching the way users will visually process those same elements. Titles and labels are extremely important to provide clarity to your visual elements. Hence, avoid using acronyms and other abbreviations, as that may produce confusion to the users. Markers are a very powerful technique to improve the readability of the series visuals. Finally, carefully choose the report theme, contrast, and colors. Don't forget the photo of the balloon and green fields, as users with color vision deficiencies may have issues understanding the data based on colorblind, unfriendly colors. So, let's quickly reiterate through the best practices when it comes to designing reports for accessibility. Ensure that color contrast between the report elements is at least 4.5 by 1. Try to avoid using colors as the only way for transmitting the message. You may want to supplement colors with text or icons. Always use clear textual descriptions of the report elements. If you're using non-decorative visuals in your report, make sure to add alt text option to them. Be mindful when choosing a color palette for your report and make sure that users with color vision deficiency can also understand the data. Finally, avoid using tooltips as the only method for transmitting important information. They are difficult to access for users with motor issues or users that don't have a PC mouse. When you are telling your data story, there are many possible ways to communicate with the consumers. One of the core concepts in that process is guided analytical experience. Simply said, that's the way you navigate your users between the different layers of the report. Don't forget, in analytical reporting solutions, you should enable consumers to see not only high-level information, but also details to provide them with the possibility to understand the data from different perspectives. Okay, so there is a bunch of different techniques for navigating users to a detailed overview of the data, but 4 of them are the most common when working with Power BI. Drillable visuals. This method requires the lowest development effort, as you will simply use a matrix visual to structure your data that way that it's easy for the user to navigate between the hierarchy levels. When you choose this approach, be mindful of the matrix visual size, as you don't want your users to get lost if they drill down to a, let's say, 4th level of matrix to realize that they can't see the data without additional effort. Tooltips are another powerful way to provide additional details. By default, a visual tooltip will pop up once you hover over a specific data point, and they include all the fields, both columns and measures, that are part of the visual. However, there is a much more sophisticated way to leverage tooltips featured in Power BI. You may create a special tooltip page where you define a separate report page with all the visuals you want and then instruct Power BI to use this page as a tooltip. Let me quickly show you how it's done. So I will move to Power BI desktop, and let's say that here, let me first show you. So here, when I hover over these data bars in my sales amount by brand name visual, I see a default tooltip created by Power BI. So when I hover over AdventureWorks, I see brand name is AdventureWorks and sales amount is slightly higher than 100 million US dollars. For Litware, this data changes in the tooltip, so this is a default tooltip. Here I already prepared my tooltip page, which basically breaks this sales amount based on different colors of the brand, within the brand of the product. Okay, so let me quickly show you how you create a tooltip page. So you click on the plus sign to create a new report page, and under formatting pane and canvas settings, instead of default type 16:9, I will choose tooltip. Now I can put my visuals on this page, and the most important thing is that under page information, this option allow use as a tooltip should be turned on. So this one should be turned on. That way we are instructing Power BI that we want to use this page as a tooltip. Okay, in this case I don't need this one because I already created my tooltip page. So I have tooltip colors, and let's go back to our main report page, and instead of using default tooltip, I want to use tooltip page here. So here I will go to search and tooltips. Tooltips are turned on, and under options, instead of default, I will choose report page. Next, here, okay, sorry, I forgot to turn on here, allow use as a tooltip. So now, because I didn't turn on this feature, Power BI wasn't aware that I want to use this page as a tooltip page. Now I will turn that on. Go back here and let's do again. So tooltip, report page, and tooltip colors. You see now it's available. So I will choose tooltip colors. Now when I hover over AdventureWorks, I see those 100 million broken down for each specific color. You see that, for example, products with white color are the top performing one. For Litware it's silver, for Fabricam it's black, and so on and so on. So tooltip page is a powerful way to convey the message and to provide your report consumers with additional information by just hovering over a single data point in the main visual. Okay, going back to presentation. Next one is drill through. This feature which will enable you to navigate the user to a different page that can be part of the existing but also of the other external report. Why would you use drill through? Well, applying this technique lets you avoid clutter in the main visual. If the user needs to see detailed data for the specific point of the main visual, they can drill through and perform the required detailed analysis. Let's again quickly move to Power BI Desktop, and I'll show you how to configure a drill through feature. So here, let's say that I want to enable my users to see this AdventureWorks total amount of 100 million, more details about the underlying data. So I already created here sales amount color. Okay, so it's the similar logic like for tooltips page, but in this case is a separate report page which can give more information to my users about what is happening with product sales for specific colors within the brand. So now if I, for example, right click on Litware, there is an option to drill through, and I can go to my sales amount color drill through page. Why? Because I already put my brand name here in a drill through as a drill through field. It's here. So once I right click on Litware and select drill through, you'll see that I will see sales amount for each color within the Litware brand, and you see the title is dynamically adjusted to display the selected brand. So in this case is Litware. You see that it's silver, brown, black, blue, and so on. I can click on this back arrow to go back to my main report page. Again, let's click on Contoso, for example. Right click on Contoso, drill through, sales amount color. Now I'm seeing numbers for Contoso. So this way, you are basically removing clutter from the main visual and enable your users to get detailed information, but placing this information in another place, and in most cases this will significantly improve the report user's experience. Okay, so finally the last one, by leveraging a paginated report visual in Power BI, you can enable users to connect directly to an underlying database and check individual records that are not part of the stored Power BI dataset. Remember when we told that sometimes you may want to communicate a piece of important data quickly and grab consumers' attention immediately? You can achieve this goal in multiple different ways in Power BI. First one is conditional formatting. Conditional formatting helps you change the default behavior by configuring background color, font color, or enabling data bars to reflect the difference between specific data points. Let me quickly show you what I'm talking about. So let's go again to Power BI Desktop and I'll show you how to set conditional formatting. Here I have a table visual that shows me sales amount for all the months in 2009. So let's apply some conditional formatting. Okay, for example, let's apply to font color, and instead of using gradient, I will set this to use rule, and let's say that if the value is greater than, let's see what we have here, let's say 80 million, right? And lower than maximum number. Then I want to show a green value. Okay, and if it's lower or equal, so we not exclude the maximum number from conditional formatting, and let's say if it's greater or equal to minimum number and lower than 80 million, we want to display, let's say, this blue one, but not for year. That's my bad. So go for sales amount and font color. You see that Power BI automatically applied gradual formatting, but let's do again here. So for sales amount, if it's greater than 80 million and lower or equal maximum number, then let's again use this green, and if the value is greater than or equal minimum number and lower than 80 million, let's use this blue one, and you see that if it's greater than 80 million, we'll see green numbers. It makes sense in different scenarios when you want to emphasize the difference between the data points. You can also turn data bars. That's also a cool way to show, to immediately show visually how big is the difference between certain data points. That's also a cool way of conveying the message. Okay, so you may also use the analytic pane to format specific visual types to display not only the actual data, but also to embed some additional analytics to it, such as average line, median line, or even to forecast values based on the historical changes. Finally, there are certain specialized visual types that can enhance user experience, most related to AI features in Power BI. These visuals are key influencers and decomposition tree. In a nutshell, key influencers use AI algorithms to determine which factors are the most relevant for the specific metric, while decomposition tree enables consumers to visualize the data across multiple dimensions in a very intuitive way. When we are talking about data visualization in Power BI, you will hardly find a more powerful feature than bookmarks. There are literally infinite possibilities to leverage bookmarks for creating appealing data stories. It's fair to say that the bookmarks topic could be easy a 60-minute session on its own. In simple words, what bookmark does, it captures the current state of the report page, and you may then use different report elements such as buttons, shapes or images to navigate between these captured states. Creating bookmarks is a straightforward process, but configuring them requires some additional understanding and consideration. You can use bookmarks for simple tasks like resetting slicers, then switch between different visual types in the same space on the report canvas, all the way to advanced user experience by creating overlaying visualizations. As this is just a crash course on data visualization, let's stop here with explaining advanced techniques and focus on one very simple, which I'm sure you will use in the majority of your reports. I'll now quickly demonstrate how to use a bookmark for resetting all the slicers in your report with just a single click. So I'm again in Power BI desktop, and I have, as you see, I have 3 slicers on my report page for year, month and brand. Now let's say that I want to enable my users that they can simply click on one button and reset all slicers at the same time. So the first thing I'm going to do is to insert a button that will do this action for me. And let's put it here, and let's add some text to it. So we'll reset all. Okay, it's here. Fine. Now what we need to do is, as I already explained, bookmarks capture the current state of the page. So let's first thing, as a first step, we turn on the bookmark. So if I go to View tab on the top and turn on my bookmarks, I'll add a new bookmark, and I call that one Reset Slicers. Here under 3 dots, if I click on 3 dots, there are different properties here. The most important one in this case, in this example, is data property. Why? Because if you leave this data option checked, that means once you navigate back to this bookmark, to this captured state of the page, all the current data will be also transferred to that captured state of the page, which means in our case all slicers will be reset to display all the values. If I turn off this data property, then once I navigate between the bookmarks, I will not transfer the data itself, data from the visuals. So I will just change the visual state of my report page, but the data will not be transferred. With data being checked, we are ensuring that we also transfer the current state of the visuals together. Okay, so the final thing is that we define action for our button. I will turn on action, and under type I will select bookmark, and my bookmark reset slicers. Okay, now let's go and select, for example, 2008 and 2009. Here I will select April and June, and here I will select, let's say, AdventureWork, Contoso and Northwind Traders. Now imagine that our users are done with analysis and they want to revert back to where they started. So to the first state of this report page where all the slicers were reset. So if it weren't if we don't have this bookmark with reset all, so they need to go and manually reset every single slicer. Now with 3 slicers it's not so big hassle, but imagine having like, I don't know, 10 or more slicers on the report page and resetting one by one. Now if I click on this reset all button, you see that all my slicers are reset. So let's try again, and you see that, for example, now we have different values here. Click on reset all and we are back where we started. So bookmarks are really powerful feature, and use cases for bookmarks are really infinite. Let's slowly wrap up things we covered so far and add some additional food for thought. So we'll be talking about multiple rules to stick with when you are designing your Power BI reports. Target audience. As you've already learned in the beginning part of this session, understanding the audience that you need to target with the report is one of the first, but at the same time crucial tasks. Depending on the audience group, you should structure the design of your report. Don't forget, dashboards are for executives, operational reports are cockpit of the car, while analytical reports focus on answering various business questions from different angles, from different perspectives, and they are the most common way of presenting the data in Power BI. Keep it simple. This is more of a general principle. Don't try to impress your users with a bunch of unnecessary effects and tricks. In most cases, keeping your visualization game simple will produce the most effective outcome. Consistency. Again, a general principle, not the one related to the Power BI exclusively. Being consistent helps your users understand the message you're trying to transmit without any confusion or uncertainty. Remove noise. When you design the report, it's easy to fall into the trap of displaying everything on one single page. And instead of providing your users with a comprehensive insight, the noise produced by using too many unnecessary visuals and too many unnecessary details will hurt the user experience. Color selection. This is not an easy one. Simply, depending on the company's brand, you may be forced to use specific colors which are not so user-friendly, especially for users with visual impairments. In any case, think twice before you choose the preferred color palette for the report and avoid using high contrasting colors. Highlight key data. We've already explained why this topic is so important. You may want to give higher priority to certain data points depending on the business requirements, but in those scenarios, it makes sense to apply different techniques for highlighting those points. For example, by using conditional formatting. Now, all of these rules are of course extremely important, but if you ask me, one rule is more general than all 6 we previously mentioned. So let's think of it as the general golden rule. What is it about? Let's say that I'm showing a total revenue in a simple card visual. Wow, 40 million. That's great, isn't it? I mean, 40 million, that's huge. However, what if we had 50 million of revenue in the previous year, in the same period in the previous year? Now my 40 million figure doesn't look so nice anymore. So what's the moral of this story? Context is the key. Providing plain information or a piece of data doesn't make much sense unless we put it into the proper context. You should always provide context to the message you are communicating to your audience. Of course, despite we've covered a lot in this session, this is far from the comprehensive data visualization guide. So I prepared a list of useful resources that you may refer to if you are in doubt about the best way to visually communicate the message in Power BI. First one is Storytelling with Data. That's a book and also a blog, a website where you can find, I think, the most comprehensive guide to data visualization. So strongly recommended to check out these resources. Then my fellow MVP colleague Kerry Kolosko, she's a real data visualization expert, and her blog is full of great tips and tricks for on data visualization. If you want to learn more about accessibility, understand different perspectives of designing Power BI reports for accessibility, again, my colleague and fellow MEP Megan Longoria, her blog is the great place to start. And finally, last but not least, there is a wonderful official Microsoft Learning path on designing effective reports in Power BI, where you can find much more details about all these topics that I covered in this session. You can find more about that in this learning path. This was all from my side. Hope that you enjoyed the session and picked up some useful tips for making your Power BI reports not just more visually appealing, but also better in terms of the overall quality and providing the insights in a more efficient way. Thank you once again for joining, and enjoy the rest of Data Platform Summit. You can also see on your screens how to win some cool prizes. So fingers crossed and good luck. See you.